In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint a self-portrait creatively, stage 4, 5, and 6. Welcome back to another video. If you haven't watched the stage 1, 2, 3 of how to paint a self-portrait, you can find the links to those videos in the description box below. So for painting a self-portrait, I'm going to use the primary colors red, yellow, blue, and the neutral colors black and white. You can choose both different temperatures, warm or cool, and mix your colors based on your reference photo. I highly recommend to mix your paint for both dark and light flesh tones ahead of time, so once you start working on your painting, you don't run out of those colors while you're working. However, you will be mixing many more colors. So for the flesh tone, I'm going to mix some cadmium yellow and cadmium red with lots of white for my lightest version of the skin tone. This color almost looks like the colors that you see in the foundations and makeups. And so I'm going to increase the amount of red and start adding some blue to create darker flesh tones. And as you see, I am mixing a range of flesh tones all the way from lightest to the darkest that I can find on my reference photo. I try to have a good mixture of both warm and cool tones. And as you see, I have both colors that have ochre in them and colors that have purple in them. I'm also going to add some greens and blues as well to add a little bit of more arbitrary colors to my self-portrait. These blues, purples, and greens can be found on some of the shadow areas or on other areas such as hair and so on that make your painting way more interesting. Once you mix your paint, you can put it in a Tupperware so it doesn't dry, and you can save it for as long as possible until you finish your portraits. Okay, let's add some life to this dead person and adding some flesh tones to it. When applying paint and blending the colors on different areas on your face, make sure to pay some attention on the form of a muscle tissue of that area. For example, the muscles of the cheeks look like a stretched out tear shape. Eyes are spherical, and most of the parts of the face are having a very organic form. So try to follow that when you're applying your paint and blending your colors, and follow those directions for your brush strokes. Alright, let's start applying our flesh tone on the face. So I'm going to start with the lightest color that I find on my reference photo and start applying these light flesh tones anywhere that I find it. I'm working in layers and I'm working in thin layers. For the first layer, I don't make very thick layer of paint. I'm just trying to detect the colors and just add the colors that I see where I see, and I'm going to apply them. In the stage 4, I'm just going to apply these colors, and whatever color that I find, even if it's just a tiny bit like this little bit of red here, I'm going to just apply it and not care so much of how does it make it look like, because once I'm going to add more layers to it, then it's going to show itself through. So you have to be very patient with this stage. It's going to be slightly long and time consuming, but you will see how it will turn out. While you're adding your flesh tones, you're going to go through many different stages, like how I'm looking like at this stage, like a little old lady. During any stages of painting, you can fix things that you think don't work or that you think you made a mistake. There is absolutely no problem with just stopping at that moment and fixing. And everything is fixable with acrylic paints. For example, I noticed that my lips are not as smiley as they should be, so I should probably fix that. And while I'm just applying my paint and flesh tones, I'm just going to make my mouth a little bit more smilier by just adding those colors where it should be. So here I noticed that I made a mistake with where my shoulders line fall. So I'm just gonna fix it right now and look at this angle where my shoulder is starting and ending, and I'm just going to add more color to fix that area. Always take some time to look at your reference photo and looking at all the forms and shapes before you start applying the paint. And so once you apply the paint in the form that you see. I call this stage the puzzle stage, because any color that I find, even if it's just a tiny bit of red or orange or ochre, I'm just going to find it and I apply it wherever that I find that. If it is a tiny bit of that color around my eyes, I apply it around the eye, and if I find it that same color is happening on my neck or on my cheeks, I'm just going to add that right on those areas as well. And my hands and my eyes are just moving all around this painting while I'm working on it. One thing to mention and remind again is that we are using the reference photo just as a reference. I'm not trying to make my painting exact copy of this reference photo. This is a self-portrait being done creatively. So I'm going to recreate my own self-portrait by using this reference photo and just getting some ideas from it. As I mentioned, for this painting I'm only using the primary colors and the black and white, but if you have other colors such as orange, burnt sienna, ochre, or any of these colors that are in the range of browns or even purples, you can use those colors as well. It's just how you mix colors that is going to make the difference. Result will be the same. Now that I have applied my lighter tones, I'm looking at the darker tones and find out how dark that color, for example, on my jawline is, and just apply it. And I continue doing this, going back and forth between the light and dark tones. Remember every once in a while to take a break in between your painting and step at least 3 feet away from your easel so you can take a look at your painting at large and see if everything is coming together well, if there is enough harmony between the colors, and also just comparing it to your reference photo and see what is working and what is not working. If you get tired of one area, take a break from it, move on to another area. Once you apply the paint, let it dry, go work on another area and come back to it. Also, I really like to keep some of the colors of my underpainting always showing through. I just feel that it adds more dimension and depth to my painting. You can try that too. And make sure to use smaller brush for smaller areas, such as eyes. So I noticed because I am slightly looking down, my chin is slightly smaller than what I have drawn here. So I'm going to fix that as well by just playing around with my light and shadows under my chin. And to blend the colors well, I make sure that I blend them while they are wet, or maybe as I am applying, I just blend them right in there as well. Maybe you can even use 2 brushes at the same time to make this as quick and as effective as possible. Okay, I'm tired of working on the face, so I'm just going to move on to the other things like my hair and this accessories, the hair scarf that I have in my hair. Now for painting the hair, make sure that you start your brush strokes right from the root of the hair and follow the direction that your hair growth has. If you have curly hair, make sure that you do more circular movements and the directions of your hand while you're making your marks for the hair. And if you have more straight hair, make sure that you just follow that same direction, but again starting from the root of your hair. If you have lighter hair, make sure to add slightly darker underpainting for the hair, so once you apply your highlights on the hair, it becomes more clear and you don't have to go back in and adding darker tones. And if you have dark hair, add your underpainting as slightly lighter, so when you add the darker tones, you can make your highlights much easier. Make sure to take your time during all these stages and not rush through. Okay, now that my face looks more or less like a face, I'm going to add some of the pure colors on my face as a wash to just add a little bit of more interesting hint to it. Like I'm going to add a little bit of this yellow and orange and blues. And as I'm working, I'm checking everything all over again. If there's any area that I need to keep working more on, like my eyebrows or any shadows or my hair, I'm just going to scanning everything with my eyes and adding those colors on top of it. At any moment, if you're unsure how to find out that particular color that you see on a reference photo, you can mix your paint and place color on your brush close to your reference photo and see if it matches or not. I'm going to add some highlights to my hair. For my hair, I didn't use only black. I still have the underpainting underneath the hair showing up. I used some ultramarine blue as well as some phthalo blue, and just some areas where were the darkest, I added some black. And now I'm just adding some highlights to show the shine on my hair. And again, I'm following the direction of my hair. It is wavy and braided, so I just try to show that with my mark making. So once I'm somewhat satisfied with the face, I'm just working a little bit more on the accessories that I have. I have a necklace and I'm just going to slightly make that clear. And also, if you're working on a canvas or a wooden board like what I have here, make sure to paint the sides as well and the edges, because it's just going to look much better, especially if you're going to hang it somewhere. It's nice that all around it is painted and it looks more professional this way. Yes. And approaching to the last touches, I'm just going back and covering up all the other lines that has left from my underpainting and the drawing with my background color. And that was the end of stage 4. For stage 5, I'm going to use my finest brush and making all the last touches of some little light and shadows and making some of the lines more clear and distinct and bold, just to make the painting even more interesting. For example, my jawline is not as distinct in my reference photo, but I like to make it very bold. And my face is very much lighter, but I like to add the light only on my cheeks, on my forehead, and on my nose, and a tiny bit on my neck, and keep some of that shadow still on my neck. I find that is more visually appealing. And working a little bit more on my eyes. Eyes seem to draw the most attention in a portrait when viewers are looking at it. So I'm going to take some more time and work on the eyes. Make sure to remember that your eyes are not white around the pupil and the center of your eyes. It's actually just gray, and there are some tiny bit of blues and tiny bit of red because of the vein that is going through your eyes. Also, I'm going to work a little bit on my eyelids and making it slightly darker. Just by looking at my reference photo, I see that my eyes and around my eyes are much darker, so I'm going to just follow that. I'm also going to add the reflection light on my eyes to make them more realistic looking. I'm not going to draw or paint my eyelashes because I don't see them on my reference photo. I think I'm just going to keep it this way, and maybe just add a tiny bit of eyelash at the corner of my eyes. But if you decide to go and paint your eyelashes, make sure to use the finest brush that you have so you can make very clear, nice, thin lines. Since this is the first time that you're painting a portrait or a self-portrait, you might find yourself having some trouble with painting eyes or any of the facial features, which is normal. And if that happens, don't worry. You can try to paint some eyes and noses as an example in your sketchbook to just get some idea and practice that very quickly. It's going to be really helpful. Even drawings like this can be helpful because at least they teach you the lines and the shadows and lights on these facial features. And I continue working on my facial features a little bit more, adding some more details. And to finish the painting, I'm going to add a little bit of more light on the areas that are popping out, like again my cheeks and my forehead and some tiny bit on my lips. And I will finish my painting at this point. Of course, I can keep working on it and even improve it more and keep adding more layers to make it even more realistic looking, but I think it's looking pretty good at this point, and it does demonstrate how a self-portrait can be painted with acrylic paint. So that was the end of stage 5. And for the stage 6, which is adding a creative element, I would like you to think about what it is that you define yourself with it the most. What makes you authentic? Or, there are so many different ways to look at yourself. And find one element that tells a little bit about that, and just adding it to your painting however that you can. Right now I feel very feminine and I feel very poetic. So I found this orchid flower and that is slightly dried, and I'm going to just add it to my hair. I think the colors go well and it matches to how I'm feeling at the moment. I'm also going to add my newspaper woven tiara that I have made from a different project as my creative element. Alright, so I finished my self-portrait. Here it is, and as usual I really like to add a creative element to it, so I added the little orchid flower as well as my tiara here from another project that I made last year, newspaper queen, so I'm going to include that as part of my creative element for the last stage of this self-portrait project. I also have made the other one from last year where I had a mustache and a hat for my creative element, and because we didn't have that much time in the class I couldn't really finish it, and I just kind of liked it like this and I left it just unfinished. Anyway, if you try to paint a self-portrait, I would like to see how your portraits turn out, and please feel free to share them with me. And if you want to know more about this particular self-portrait from last year and why I put a mustache on it, there's a video that I made about it, and you can find the link of this video on the description box below. Thank you very much for your attention and thanks for watching. Until next video, goodbye.